On a quiet day in 1958, the Martin family of Portland, Oregon, Kenneth, Barbara, and their 3 daughters piled into their car for a Sunday drive. They were never seen alive again. This is Gloomy Girl, and today we're diving into one of Oregon's most haunting and puzzling cold cases, the disappearance of the Martin family. Kenneth Martin was a 54-year-old appliance repairman. His wife, Barbara, was 48. Together they had 4 children, though only 3, Susan, 10, Virginia, 12, and Barbara, known as Barbie, age 14, were living at home when it all happened. Their son, Donald, who was 28, was in New York. The family were known to be community-minded and fun-loving. Ken enjoyed entertaining the neighborhood children by dressing up as Santa Claus at Christmas and making candy cane decorations, leading to their street to be nicknamed Candy Lane. The Martins also organized things like parades and Kool-Aid stands in the summertime. On Sunday, December 7, 1958, the family left the Northeast Portland home in their 1954 Ford station wagon. They told friends and neighbors they were heading east along the Columbia River Gorge to collect greenery for Christmas decorations, maybe even to find a Christmas tree. They were seen eating lunch, and then they were spotted around 4 p.m. in the small town of Cascade Locks, about 40 miles from home. A gas station attendant recalled serving them and remembered them being in good spirits. That was the last confirmed sighting. When the Martins didn't return home that night, no one panicked right away. It wasn't unusual for the family to take long Sunday drives, even though Ken did not like to drive at night. But by Monday morning, when Kenneth failed to show up for work, concern began to grow. By midweek, the Martins were officially reported missing. Police launched a search, but found nothing. No sign of the family, no crash site, no station wagon, no tire marks on icy roads. Local authorities, volunteers, and even the FBI got involved. Detective Graven worked on the case and even kept notes about it until his death in 1988. Here's where things start to get strange. On December 28th, 3 weeks after the disappearance, a man walking along the river near the Dalles found tire tracks that seemed to veer off a cliff. Mind you, this cliff is filled with rocks. Investigators believe that these tracks could belong to the Martins' car, but the icy, swift-flowing Columbia River made recovery efforts difficult and very dangerous. Then, more chilling clues resurfaced. A lady named Bonnie and her husband found a gun that was bloody near an abandoned car. They gave it to police. It was a .38 caliber revolver that was linked to the Martin son, 28-year-old Donald. It was later traced back to a Mir and Frank department store, the same store where Kenneth had bought camping gear earlier that year. It is said the car thief Lester Price had a mutual acquaintance with Donald. According to some, the stolen car was linked to Lester. Lester knew Donald, their mutual friend Wayne. Donald and Wayne had become friends in 1953 while Wayne was a student at Portland State University, and Donald worked at Mir and Frank, where at one point, Donald admitted to stealing over $2,000 worth of items, including the gun, although some say it was just a stolen identification number. The gun was never returned to the store, and Donald later denied knowledge of the gun, stating that it was Wayne who liked guns and had a buddy who worked in sporting goods, and it wasn't him. Now just wait until later, it doesn't add up. In 1958, while a PE teacher at Cascade Locks High School, Wayne became acquainted with the ex-convict Richard Hunt, who was also close to Lester. Wayne reportedly stated in a 2008 interview that he had been in Cascade Locks himself on the afternoon of Sunday, December 7th in 1958. Teaching a PE class. This information does not seem to have been known to Detective Graven. Donald and Wayne were the same age. They became roommates and close friends. Wayne stayed close to the Martins even after things weren't good at home for Don due to the Martins upset about Don's sexuality. According to the interview in 2008, Wayne said that this discovery happened when Kenneth and Barbara unexpectedly returned home one day and caught Donald with another male. Although they wanted him to join a Christian college in Connecticut, he instead went into the Navy and eventually married a lady named Helen. Helen and Donald had many children and grandchildren, all of which said their father would never talk about his family or what happened. Relationships with the rest of the Martins were strained after Don's theft. He allegedly told his bosses at Mir and Frank that he had been having a difficult time at home due to the revelation of his sexuality. His mother was apparently described by him as a fat slob, his father not much better, and his sisters as having the capacity of growing up to be like them. But that wasn't any reason to hurt the whole family, and authorities didn't have enough to charge him. Now, side note, I just want to point this out. Did he not say he knew nothing about a camping store? But yet he admitted to them? So which is it? Did you work there or did you not work there? As time went on, due to all of this, theories of foul play began to gain traction. Detective Graven noted that moving away from them to New York, however, did not seem to have cured Don's tendencies. He had been accused of stealing once again in New York and was seen as a psychiatrist. Donald did not travel from New York to assist with the search for his family, claiming that his paternal aunt, Charlotte, had encouraged him to stay in New York. A suggestion she refuted. And I also seen on other things when I was reading about it He pretty much said, well, the cops have it taken care of. What am I going to do? Like, what more can I offer that they're not doing? When questioned, Donald allegedly showed little emotion about his family missing, and Donald denied any involvement. While all those details raised eyebrows, there was no direct evidence linking Donald to the disappearance. No eyewitnesses, no fingerprints, no motive strong enough to press charges, and without the vehicle, there was no crime scene. Still, the timing, the gun, and the family tension kept him in the shadows even decades later. Detective Graven worked on this case constantly, wrote in his notebook before he died, saying it had to be planned out by blank. He had scratched out the name of the suspect above the line reading, no one else with a motive. And later, a computer enhancement determined that the scratched out name said Donald. Again, this is just someone's theory, nothing proven or disproven, and Donald actually passed away in 2004. There were also unconfirmed reports from a watchman near the Bonneville Dam who said he saw a car parked near the river late that night and spotted two men behaving strangely, possibly dumping something into the water, but again, no solid leads. It wasn't until May of 1959 that the case saw its first tragic break. A drilling rig being dropped to the riverbed nearby caught on something big. Whatever it was appeared to have become stuck on the anchor, and efforts to pull the anchor up failed. Unfortunately, the item became dislodged before it could be winched back into the surface, but a man on board who was able to strike the item with a long pole believed it to be made of metal. Being unaware of the tire tracks or of the Martins' family disappearance, it was multiple days before they reported their discovery to the police, thinking it was no big deal. Which is like, you still reported it to the police, so it had to be a big enough deal to report it, right? Just not big enough where it was like, this is an emergency at this moment. We'll deal with this in a couple days when I remember. Earlier the day at around 6 a.m., fisherman Ellery Colby and his wife noticed what appeared to be two bodies floating down the stream near Cascade Locks, 40 miles away from the drilling rig. They re-encountered the bodies at Bonneville Dam. Eventually at noon, Sunday, May 3rd, one body was recovered near Camas, Washington, on the north bank of the Columbia River, while the other was found near the dam the next day. They were identified via dental records as the bodies of Susan and Virginia. It was now clear that the Martins had in fact entered that river, and the item dislodged by the anchor was probably most likely their car, which might have had window damage, which is why the bodies floated out. The bodies were autopsied in Portland. Prior to the autopsies, a technician who fingerprinted the bodies stated that they believed that there were bullet holes in the girl's head. However, the medical examiner, Dr. Waterman, officially recorded that both had died of drowning and stated that he had found no such injuries. The official cause of death was drowning, but the medical examiner also noted, though, that there were traces of trauma, bruising that could not be clearly explained, though not enough to confidently label the deaths as homicides. The findings left investigators with more questions than there were answers. Dives were carried out to recover the remains of Kenneth, Barbara, and Barbie, but were halted after a search diver almost drowned. Despite extensive searches using divers, sonar, and helicopters, the car was never found at that time. Donald did not attend Susan and Virginia's memorial, with the justification that he had mistaken the dates. Oops, my bad. No, if that's true, I don't know. Yet a month later, came to wrap up and sign to take over the Martins' estate. It was about $36,000, which is like $400,000 today. Maybe he couldn't get off work. Maybe he could. Maybe it was too upsetting. We really don't know, but it does look extremely sketchy. And I'm really glad that he could remember that date, but not sure why he couldn't remember the more important of the two, but maybe he's forgetful. I don't know the guy. This only deepened suspicion of foul play. The two girls' remains actually sat unclaimed for over 2 decades. It wasn't until the grandmother passed away that they laid to rest with her. Whoever claimed the two girls was unknown. Then a few locals came forward claiming they'd seen 2 men in a truck acting suspicious near the river the night the family disappeared. One dam worker even claimed he saw a car stop and a man throwing something into the water. Police followed up, but the men were never identified. At one point, there were even rumors that the Martins' vehicle had been seen driving to Mexico, but those reports were never verified and are widely considered either mistaken or false. As the months passed, tips slowed down and leads dried up. And I kind of want to add to them being seen in Mexico. More than 65 years later, the question still haunts Oregon. What really happened to the Martin family? To some, the answer is tragic but simple. An accident. The theory goes like this. The Martins were driving along the icy, windy roads of the Columbia River Gorge. Maybe they stopped to enjoy the view. Maybe Kenneth lost control of the car. They skidded off the road, plunged into the river, and were swept away. With strong currents, deep water, and poor winter visibility, it's possible the car was never seen again. The bodies of Susan and Virginia may have floated free and surfaced months later. It's a logical explanation, but it leaves too many loose ends. For example, if the family station wagon sank near the Dalles, as the tire marks suggested, how did the girls' bodies end upstream, near Bonneville and Camas. Why were they found miles apart and in a relatively good condition, despite supposedly passing through a hydroelectric dam? Unless where the car sank isn't really where they say. Another theory suggests the Martins may have picked up a hitchhiker or encountered someone while stopped along the river and were killed. But again, no evidence, no witnesses. These are all just rumors or theories. In 1961, a few years after the disappearance, a group of divers searching the Columbia River near the Dalles discovered a submerged vehicle buried deep in the silt. It was heavily corroded and impossible to retrieve at the time due to the fast-moving currents. Authorities wondered, though, could this be the Martin family station wagon? At the time, no recovery was ever made, and the car was never positively identified. That patch of river still holds a lot of mysteries and possibility. The final evidence needed to solve this case. Another theory. There are a lot. Like, when you look at this case, everyone has a theory. Like, everyone has some theory. With most cases that are unsolved, everyone has a theory. Even if things are solved, they're like, nope, that's not it. This is how it went. Okay, so the other theory is that 14-year-old Barbie was pregnant and that Wayne was the father. The main piece of evidence was the fact that a few months previously, she had been taken to the doctor in Vancouver, Washington, rather than her usual local family doctor. Wayne, by his own admission, spent a lot of time with the Martins. According to Donald, he was also the one that was responsible for stealing the gun, later found near the abandoned car. Had he arranged to meet the Martins in the Paradise snack bar that afternoon, which is where they had lunch, instead setting them up to be met and disposed of by his acquaintances, Hunt and Price. Price and Hunt were fugitives, one of which worked where the Martins had lunch. The other was eating lunch there. The abandoned car, stolen by Price. Yes, the abandoned car where the gun was found. Both men were arrested the next day after the Martins disappeared, with no relation to the Martins. There's this thing about theories. Everyone has one, and everyone will have a million reasons why theirs is right. Sadly, nobody fully knows the truth like victims do. Rather, it was a homicide or an accident, but thankfully, it can still be solved and bring a slight closure to the family and those involved. In more recent years, modern search teams using sonar have explored the river floor again. And as of recently, a diver named Archer has spent his time learning and studying the case. And mind you, he has his own theories. He's put a lot of work into, what he believes. And he really goes into a deep dive into everything. Into it and actually found the top half of the Martins' car, but where the vehicle has so much debris that they have to get the funds to recover the rest, as the state no longer wants to put money into it. So if you're interested, martinmystery.com, and you can find info and contact him if you think you're able to help in any way with this case. Even if they retrieve the vehicle, what happened to them is what remains a mystery. And where are the bodies of Kenneth, Barbara, and Barbie? I understand there'd be decomposition right now, but there would still be bones. And I really hope they can be found and laid to rest with the other girls who are buried near their grandmother in Portland, Oregon. They really deserve to be laid to rest. Over 6 decades have passed since that cold December day in 1958. The case remains open, though considered cold by the Oregon State Police. In fact, it's one of the oldest active missing persons cases in the Pacific Northwest. Like I've said a million times this day, no one knows for sure what happened to Kenneth, Barbara, and their daughters, but this mystery continues to fuel debate. Was it an accident, a murder, a cover-up? One thing is certain. The Columbia River keeps its secrets well. The disappearance of the Martin family is a chilling reminder that even the most ordinary day can take a dark, irreversible turn. A Sunday drive, a missing car, a family torn from history, leaving behind only questions. If you have any information about the Martin family case, or know someone who might, please contact the Oregon State Police Cold Case Division. May the victims be at peace and their families have closure. Until next time, sleep well.